I feel like a lot of online discourse around 3D printers and 3D printer reviews actually do a disservice to people, because whenever people don't know the resource usage of something, they are very inefficient with resources. They will just burn down a forest and then realize, oh, there's not more forest. I forgot. And with 3D printers, there's a lot of negatives to 3D printers that people don't talk about, because YouTube videos, it's very easy just to be very pinpointed onto what's interesting or fun, but that pushes people to use 3D printers in a way that undermines the magic of them. For instance, I'm doing a review of this Tina 2 Plus 3D printer, and it's very fitting because a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago, I found these other Tina 2 printers, and I got them at an e-waste recycler for an absolute steal, and I've printed a few useful things on them. And this is great for schools, and then it's great to get for cheap, and you can it can have an afterlife printing brackets and washers and things for you. But I'm not going to be making a bunch of benchies whenever I review this 3D printer. I'm not going to make a single benchy. I don't like benchy because I don't want to have any model just sitting around. I don't print anything that isn't going to be used. And anytime I do, it's honestly kind of sad. Then, or enjoy. I just don't have that much shelf space to enjoy stuff. And a lot of people also don't seem to put much focus on making do with a print that works. Like, for instance, I recently had to print a 3D mount for my microscope. And I know for a fact that some people would have done 2 more versions that made it fit perfectly. I knew it was going to have some slop in it, so I just made the holes for the screws a bit bigger. And then one angle was kind of off, and I just kind of snipped it off with some flush cutters. Turns out me making the holes that the bolts go through much wider actually was exactly the width that I needed. So that's perfect. I'm not going to reprint that, but other people would print 2 more versions trying to get it perfectly, when you can just use a power drill to modify the print afterwards. You only need one. It doesn't need to be perfect. But also, a lot of people, they don't realize the beauty of like paper. Keep newspapers and stuff around and draw out what shape you need on a 2D profile. For instance, I saw somebody trying to figure out how to measure the inside of an inner console for a truck. Well, that's simple. What you do is you cut it. You cut a piece of paper and you put it in and see where it touches. And you keep making it to where it fits perfectly for one outline. And now you know a cross section of that piece. And if you use a piece of newspaper or a piece of paper, or like down here, you're not going to see it, but I have a whole stack of tax documents. I use these pieces of tax documents as engineering paper. You'll never see that because they have private information on them. But I go through so much paper from that. I haven't bought paper in like 10 years. And then another idea too is, instead of printing 50 versions of something, if you really, really worry about whether or not your model will work with whatever you're interfacing with, and you can't quite cut a piece of paper and measure it to act as a unit of like conveyance, I guess you could call it. Well, instead of printing a whole thing, just print one layer and have an outline of the piece. For instance, whenever I was making a new face gasket for my Vive XR Elite, I didn't know how the holes for the face gasket would line up, so I just printed one layer of the model. I sliced the whole model, and I descended it into the bed a little bit so that it would print a layer a little bit up so it would be flat. And then I let it do one layer, and I turned the printer off. I took that thin piece out, and I saw that, yep, it did match up with the VR headset. Now, in this case, it didn't match up with the VR headset, but I kind of wanted to sound like I did a better job. Actually, there was a lot of issues with it. And I didn't have to print a whole thing. I just had this one paper-thin piece of a single layer where I realized, oh, that didn't really work. But the issue with 3D printers is that they obfuscate what materials are used and the cost. I see so many people wasting plastic 3D printing things that they don't need, or they're 3D printing things just because they're excited about it. And it's much like an automobile where somebody will idolize this new truck, and so they'll buy it. And they'll feel like they should have to use it, or they'll feel so excited about it that they feel like they should be able to use it anywhere. So you get people upset that there's bike lanes. You get people upset that there's not parking in front of their favorite building. Well, there shouldn't necessarily be parking for you, because the parking for your truck could fit 3 tables for families to sit at to eat. You can park one little block away and walk to the restaurant. It's okay. You don't need to let the soft mind control get you. Well, with 3D printers, a lot of people, they get a little bit too obsessed, because I think a lot of people don't really talk about the negatives to things. And because YouTube videos are so focused on things, and entire websites, Thingiverse, printables, it's all very focused on printing. There's not much conversation about when is it best to print, because printing deliberately is a wonderful way to make these printers so much better. If you're printing something that you would have bought at the hardware store, you are now taking that 3,000-mile journey that item at the hardware store, actually like 10,000-mile journey that item at the hardware store had to make, and you're condensing it down to wherever your plastic filament came from. And you're reducing shipping costs, and you're making it for way cheaper. That's why for all my contracting work that I do, I 3D print stuff, brackets and things like that. Then I guess anything else I have to say, it could be a different video, but there's a lot of people that get a little bit, this can be a future video, but a lot of people get a little bit too fixated on these projects, where if I leave something off, I'm happy with it, but they're not. Like, for instance, I was repairing those battery backup systems for my friend's data center, and I actually had quite a few people that they themselves did not have the battery backups, but they were commenting like, you're going to reverse engineer it and make new boards, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to reverse engineer it and make new boards. If I'm going to reverse engineer somebody else's intellectual property and make new boards, I'm not going to do it to something somebody else owns a copyright for. I'm just going to make my own battery backup. But I'm not in the business of making an entire market segment for battery backups. They already have that monopolized. I'm just going to repair the battery backup I have. Like you guys really, that was kind of a funny situation, because a lot of people actually thought they were excited, thinking that I was going to reverse engineer this stuff. And well, no, I'm not going to reverse engineer the Symetra LX battery pack any more than I have to, because, well, if I'm going to do any more, I'm going to make something open source. And plus, I don't have time to do that. I shouldn't be wasting time on this. So that's a bit of a, it's like a part of a whole bigger idea that not many people have developed, of engineers and tinkerers wasting their time and wasting resources on things that aren't that really needed. And if they were just a little bit more discerning about what they chose to use resources towards, we might get a lot more done.